I was 32, a successful architect in Boston, and thought I had it all figured out. Jessica and I had been engaged for 8 months, planning the perfect wedding down to the last detail. Ethan, my adopted brother, had always been a complicated part of my life since my parents brought him home when I was 12. Though we appeared close on the surface, a strange undercurrent of resentment flowed beneath his friendly facade. Nothing could have prepared me for what I discovered the night before my wedding. Before I reveal how my entire world crumbled that night, drop a comment letting me know where you are watching from. Hit subscribe if you have ever trusted someone who did not deserve it, because this story might just save you from the same pain. My story begins in a comfortable suburb of Boston, where I grew up as the only child of Thomas and Margaret Walker. My father built a successful commercial real estate business, and my mother managed their investments with precision. We lived well, but not extravagantly. My parents instilled values of hard work and gratitude, reminding me often that our privileges came with responsibility. I had a happy childhood filled with sports, friends, and family vacations to national parks every summer. When I turned 12, my parents sat me down for a serious conversation that would forever alter our family dynamics. They had been considering adoption for years, feeling they had more love to give beyond our small family unit. My mother had volunteered at various youth shelters and became passionate about helping older children in the system who were less likely to find permanent homes. I remember feeling a mixture of excitement and apprehension about having a sibling after years as an only child. Augustus, my father said during that conversation, "We want to bring a boy named Ethan into our family. He is 10 years old and has had a difficult start to life. We believe we can give him the stable home he deserves. But we want to make sure you understand what this means." I nodded enthusiastically, imagining ball games in the backyard and someone to share my video games with. Looking back, I was naively unprepared for the complexity of welcoming a child with trauma into our home. The day Ethan arrived was sunny but cool, a perfect October afternoon. He stood on our porch clutching a small backpack containing everything he owned, his thin frame swimming in a hand-me-down jacket. His dark hair fell across suspicious eyes that scanned everything with the wariness of someone accustomed to disappointment. At 10 years old, he already carried himself like someone prepared for the worst. The social worker briefly outlined his history before leaving multiple foster homes. A mother lost to addiction. A father never in the picture. No consistent education, no proper medical care, no stability. As she drove away, I remember feeling a surge of protectiveness toward this stranger, who was now my brother. The first weeks were awkward but hopeful. I showed Ethan my comic collection, taught him how to play my favorite board games, and introduced him to the neighborhood kids. He was quiet but observant, gradually adjusting to life in our home. My parents spared no effort in making him comfortable. New clothes, a bedroom decorated to his taste, regular therapy appointments, and patient explanations of household routines most kids his age would take for granted. What none of us recognized immediately were the seeds of jealousy taking root. Ethan had never had anything to call his own, and suddenly he was sharing parents, a home, and attention with someone who had enjoyed these privileges his entire life. My parents, sensitive to his needs, often gave him special treatment, exempting him from chores when he seemed overwhelmed, buying him extra gifts, spending additional time helping him catch up academically. I understood this intellectually, but emotionally it created a strange dynamic between us. The first clear memory I have of Ethan's competitive nature emerged about 6 months after his adoption. I had won a school science competition and brought home a small trophy. At dinner that night, my parents celebrated my achievement, making my favorite meal and praising my hard work. Later that evening, I discovered my trophy broken on my bedroom floor. When I confronted Ethan, he denied involvement, but his eyes held a cold satisfaction I would come to recognize over the years. My parents encouraged me to be understanding. "Augustus, Ethan is still adjusting. He has never had the opportunities you have had. Please be patient with him. I tried repeatedly making allowances for behaviors that grew increasingly concerning as we entered our teenage years. High school intensified our rivalry. Despite being 2 years younger, Ethan deliberately tried out for the same sports teams, took the same classes when possible, and even pursued friendships with my social circle. When I made varsity baseball as a sophomore, Ethan practiced obsessively until he made the team as a freshman. When I started dating Melissa Parker junior year, Ethan suddenly became interested in her friend group, creating situations where he would be included in our outings. The pattern became clear. Whatever I valued, Ethan wanted. Sometimes he worked hard to achieve similar success, and other times he simply tried to undermine my achievements. Yet on the surface we maintained a cordial relationship. He was charming and likable to others, particularly skilled at presenting himself as the supportive brother to my parents and their friends. Only in private moments did the mask slip, revealing glimpses of resentment that seemed to grow rather than diminish with time. By the time we reached college, we had established an uneasy peace. I attended Northeastern University, while Ethan chose Syracuse, putting welcome distance between us. We saw each other during holidays and family events, maintaining the appearance of brotherly affection while minimizing actual contact. After graduation, I stayed in Boston, building my career at a respected architectural firm while Ethan moved frequently, trying various jobs in different cities. Our interactions became limited to occasional family gatherings where we performed our roles as siblings with practiced ease. Then, 3 years ago, everything in my life changed when I met Jessica Hamilton at a charity gala supporting pediatric cancer research. I had designed a children's hospital wing and was being recognized for the project. Jessica was there, representing the pediatric nursing staff. She approached me after the presentation, her brown eyes alight with intelligence and compassion. "Your design for the recovery rooms is brilliant," she said. "The way you created spaces where families can stay comfortably with their children makes such a difference for our patients." That first conversation stretched into hours, moving from the gala to a quiet cafe nearby. Jessica was passionate about her work, describing the challenges and rewards of pediatric nursing with eloquent hands and expressive features. She was beautiful not just physically, though her warm smile and graceful movements certainly caught my attention, but in how she engaged with the world, finding meaning in difficult circumstances and genuine joy in small victories. Our connection felt effortless. We shared similar values but complementary personalities. My analytical approach balanced by her intuitive understanding of people. Within weeks of meeting, we were spending most evenings and weekends together. 6 months later, she moved into my apartment overlooking the Charles River, and our lives intertwined seamlessly. For the first time, I experienced a relationship built on mutual respect, shared goals, and authentic communication. After dating for 2 years, I knew without doubt that Jessica was the person I wanted to share my life with. I planned a proposal at Blue Hills Reservation, a hiking area where we often spent weekend mornings. At the summit, overlooking Boston's skyline, I knelt with a vintage sapphire ring that had belonged to my grandmother. "Jessica," I said, my voice steadier than I had expected, "you have made every day of the past 2 years better simply by being in it. You challenge me to be my best self while loving me exactly as I am. Would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Her joyful yes echoed across the hillside as she threw her arms around me. That evening we celebrated with my parents, who embraced Jessica as the daughter they had never had. Everything felt perfect as we began planning our wedding, setting a date 8 months away at a historic venue in Cambridge. The only notable absence in our happiness was Ethan. He had moved to Chicago 2 years earlier and maintained minimal contact with the family. I sent him a text announcing our engagement, receiving only a brief "congratulations" in response. Jessica, having heard stories about my brother but never having met him, encouraged me to include him in our wedding plans despite the distance in our relationship. "Family is important," she insisted. "Whatever issues you have had in the past, your wedding might be a chance to heal that relationship." Her generous spirit was one of the countless reasons I loved her, but in retrospect, I wish I had trusted my instincts instead of her optimism. 6 months before our wedding date, Ethan called unexpectedly to announce he was moving back to Boston. He had accepted a position with a marketing firm and wanted to reconnect with family. My parents were thrilled at the prospect of having both their sons nearby again. I felt a familiar wariness but hoped that adulthood had mellowed the competitive streak that defined our earlier relationship. Our first meeting after his return seemed promising. We met for lunch at a restaurant near my office, and Ethan appeared genuinely interested in my life and relationship. He asked thoughtful questions about Jessica and seemed sincerely happy about my successful career. He spoke of personal growth during his time in Chicago and expressed regret for the tension that had characterized our younger years. I was a messed up kid, he admitted, dealing with a lot of abandonment issues. I took a lot of that out on you and it was not fair. I hope we can start fresh. His apparent sincerity and self-awareness disarmed me. When he expressed interest in meeting Jessica, I readily arranged a dinner with the three of us the following weekend. Jessica, always warm and welcoming, immediately put Ethan at ease, asking about his new job and his impressions of Boston after being away. Watching them interact, I felt a weight lifting. Perhaps we really could move beyond the patterns of our past. That evening, as Jessica and I prepared for bed, she commented on how alike Ethan and I were in our mannerisms, despite not being biologically related. "You can tell you grew up together," she observed. "You both have that same head tilt when you are thinking, and you gesture with your hands the same way when you are explaining something." I laughed, never having noticed these similarities before. Her next comment, however, should have been my first warning. "Ethan mentioned he would love to help with wedding preparations," she said. "He offered to coordinate with the DJ since he has connections in the music industry from his marketing work. Would that be okay with you?" I hesitated briefly, but agreed. Jessica was managing most of the wedding details while working full-time, and additional help seemed practical. Besides, involving Ethan might further strengthen our improving relationship. Over the next few weeks, Ethan became increasingly integrated into our lives. He joined us for dinner regularly, offered to help Jessica select flowers when I was tied up with a major project at work, and even attended a tasting session with the caterer when my schedule conflicted. I noticed he was particularly attentive to Jessica, complimenting her choices and supporting her vision for the wedding. The first time Tyler, my best friend since college, met Ethan, he pulled me aside with concern. "Something feels off about your brother," he said quietly. "The way he looks at Jessica when you are not watching. Just be careful, man." I dismissed his concerns as overprotectiveness. Tyler had been there through my previous heartbreaks and was naturally wary of newcomers in my life. Besides, Ethan was my brother, and despite our complicated history, certain boundaries seemed unthinkable. 3 weeks before the wedding, Tyler organized a bachelor weekend in Maine. Ethan joined the group of 6 close friends for fishing, hiking, and celebratory drinks around a lakeside cabin. The weekend was mostly enjoyable, though. Ethan seemed to insert himself into every conversation, particularly when the topic turned to Jessica or our relationship. On the final evening, after several drinks, Ethan made a comment that should have alarmed me more than it did. "Sometimes I wonder if you really deserve someone like Jessica," he said, his tone casual, but his eyes sharp. "She is extraordinary, compassionate, intelligent, beautiful. What makes you so special that you get to be with her?" The other guys laughed awkwardly, interpreting the remark as drunken brother teasing. I forced a smile and changed the subject, but the comment lingered uncomfortably. On the drive back to Boston, Tyler again expressed concern. "Your brother gives me the creeps," he said bluntly. "The way he talks about Jessica is inappropriate. Have you noticed how often he texts her?" I had not, but that evening I did notice Jessica's phone lighting up with messages from Ethan. When I asked about it, she explained they were coordinating final details for the wedding. "He has been so helpful with the vendors," she said, "and he is planning a surprise for the reception that he wants to keep secret from you." The explanation seemed reasonable, but I began noticing small changes in Jessica's behavior. She seemed distracted during our conversations, checking her phone more frequently than usual. Twice I came home to find her ending phone calls abruptly when I entered the room. When I asked who had called, she mentioned wedding vendors or work colleagues. I wanted to believe her, but doubt had begun to take root. The week before our wedding, my parents hosted a family dinner at their home. Jessica arrived late, explaining she had been finalizing details with the florist. Throughout the evening, I caught several glances between her and Ethan. Nothing overtly inappropriate, but a silent communication that excluded everyone else. When Jessica excused herself early, claiming exhaustion from wedding preparations, Ethan offered to walk her to her car. They were outside for 15 minutes before he returned alone. Jessica sends her apologies, he said smoothly. She has an early shift tomorrow and needed to get home. My mother, always perceptive, commented after Ethan left the room. Is everything all right between you and Jessica? She seemed distracted tonight. Wedding stress, I replied automatically, though my own uneasiness was growing. The next evening I arrived home from work earlier than expected, having completed a project presentation ahead of schedule. Our apartment felt strange as I entered. A subtle shift in energy I could not immediately identify. Glancing out the window, I spotted a familiar car parked half a block away, Ethan's black Audi. A cold sensation spread through my chest as I noted he had deliberately parked away from our building rather than in the visitor spots directly outside. Moving quietly through our apartment, I heard hushed voices coming from the bedroom. The door was partially open, and through the gap I saw Jessica sitting on the edge of our bed, Ethan standing close beside her, his hand resting on her shoulder. Their postures suggested intimacy, heads bent together in serious conversation. We need to tell him, Jessica was saying, her voice strained. I cannot go through with the wedding feeling this way. Wait until after this weekend, Ethan replied. The rehearsal dinner will be chaos, and everyone is flying in. There is no good time to drop this bomb. I pushed the door open fully, the sound causing them both to jerk apart. Jessica's face drained of color, her eyes widening in shock and guilt. Ethan, however, recovered quickly, his expression shifting from surprise to something approaching triumph. Augustus, Jessica began rising from the bed. This is not. We were just what I asked, my voice eerily calm despite the roaring in my ears. Just discussing how to tell me whatever it is you need to tell me. Ethan stepped forward, placing himself slightly between Jessica and me as if protecting her. The gesture made my stomach turn. You should sit down, he said, his tone falsely sympathetic. We need to talk. The next 30 minutes destroyed the life I had planned. Through tears, Jessica admitted she and Ethan had grown close over the past months while planning the wedding. What began as friendship had developed into feelings she could not ignore or deny. They had been physically intimate twice, information that felt like physical blows as she spoke. I did not mean for this to happen, she insisted. I love you, Augustus, I really do. But with Ethan there is something different, something I cannot explain. Throughout her confession, Ethan remained silent, watching my reaction with calculating eyes. When Jessica finally fell quiet, he spoke with casual cruelty. She was never yours to begin with, he smirked. What made you think someone like her would be satisfied with someone like you forever? This was inevitable from the moment she met me. The naked malice in his statement clarified everything. This was not about love for Jessica. It was about taking what was mine, as it had always been with Ethan. The pattern established in childhood had reached its devastating conclusion. Jessica might have believed she made a choice, but Ethan had orchestrated this betrayal from the moment he returned to Boston. How long has this been going on? I asked, my voice hollow. Jessica glanced at Ethan before answering. We first kissed 2 months ago after the menu tasting. But we have been talking constantly for longer. Talking about what? About everything, Ethan interjected. About how she feels more understood by me than by you. About how you are always working late while I make time for her. About how the chemistry between us is undeniable. Jessica winced at his blunt words. It was not like that. Not exactly. Augustus, I am so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. But the hurt was overwhelming, threatening to collapse me where I stood. 3 years of building a life with this woman, of planning a future, of believing I had found my partner. All of it revealed as an illusion in a single conversation. The rehearsal dinner is tomorrow, I said numbly. 70 people are arriving in Boston for our wedding. We will handle it, Ethan said, as if solving a minor logistical problem. Jessica and I can explain the situation to everyone. His presumption that they would face our friends and family as a couple, that they would announce their betrayal together, broke something fundamental inside me. Without another word, I turned and walked out of the apartment, keys and wallet in hand, but nothing else. I drove aimlessly through Boston streets, landmarks blurring through tears I could no longer contain. My phone buzzed repeatedly with calls from Jessica, then from my parents, but I could not bear to speak to anyone. Eventually, I called Tyler, managing only a few broken sentences before he understood the situation. Come to my place now, he said firmly. Do not be alone tonight. Tyler lived in a converted warehouse loft in South Boston. When I arrived, his fiancée, Rachel, took one look at my face and silently embraced me before making herself scarce. Tyler poured 2 glasses of whiskey and sat across from me as I recounted the devastating scene. That calculating son of a bitch, Tyler muttered when I finished. He planned this from day one. You know that, right? This was never about Jessica. This was about hurting you. Deep down, I knew he was right. The pattern was too consistent, too familiar. But recognizing Ethan's motives did nothing to ease the pain of Jessica's betrayal. She had known us, both had heard about our complicated history, and still chose to participate in this final, unforgivable act of sabotage. The next morning brought the impossible task of canceling a wedding 2 days before it was scheduled to occur. My parents arrived at Tyler's loft after their own confrontation with Ethan, who had apparently returned to their house rather than staying with Jessica. We are so sorry, Augustus, my mother said, her eyes red from crying. We had no idea. We never thought he would do something like this. My father, typically stoic, looked shattered. We failed you both, he said quietly. Ethan needed help. We did not know how to provide, and you have paid the price for our mistakes. I could not bear their guilt on top of everything else. This is not your fault, I insisted. Ethan makes his own choices. So does Jessica. Together we made the painful calls, to vendors, to the venue, to family members and friends traveling for the wedding. The humiliation of explaining the situation repeatedly was almost as painful as the betrayal itself. Some calls I could not make, asking my parents or Tyler to handle them instead. Jessica tried contacting me multiple times, her messages shifting from apologies to defensiveness as hours passed. I never meant to fall for him, one text read. These things happen sometimes. You cannot control who you love. Another. Maybe this is for the best. We might have been making a mistake rushing into marriage. The revisionist history was perhaps the most painful part. Her attempt to reframe our 3-year relationship as somehow flawed or insufficient to justify her actions. I eventually blocked her number, unable to bear the continued assault on what had once been precious memories. The week after the canceled wedding was the darkest of my life. I moved temporarily into Tyler's spare room, unable to return to the apartment Jessica and I had shared. I took leave from work, explaining vaguely about a family emergency. I lost weight, unable to stomach more than a few bites at each meal. Sleep eluded me, and when exhaustion finally pulled me under, nightmares jolted me awake within hours. Through social media I had not yet deactivated, I learned Jessica and Ethan were officially a couple, making no attempt to hide their relationship despite the wreckage they had caused. She had moved in with him temporarily while looking for her own place. They were spotted at restaurants, at movies, living the life that had been intended for us. With each sighting or mention, I sank deeper into despair, questioning not just my judgment but my fundamental worth as a person. The turning point came unexpectedly during a conversation with my father 3 weeks after the canceled wedding. He had come alone to Tyler's loft, Bringing dinner, neither of us would eat much of a tempting normal conversation I could barely follow. Finally, he set down his fork and looked at me directly. "There is something you should know about Ethan that your mother and I have never told you. We thought it would be unfair to him, but given recent events, you deserve the whole truth." He revealed that Ethan's removal from his birth mother's care had come after he deliberately set fire to their apartment when she brought home a new boyfriend. Later, he was removed from 2 foster homes, one after stealing and selling electronics, another after threatening a foster sibling with a knife when the child received more attention than he did. The adoption agency recommended extensive therapy, which we provided, my father explained. His therapists believed he had attachment disorder, stemming from early abandonment. They warned us he might struggle with forming healthy relationships and managing jealousy, but they believed with proper support he could overcome these challenges. My father's eyes filled with tears. We truly believed love and stability would heal him, and in many ways he did improve. But this pattern with you, always wanting what you have, never fully resolved. There have been other incidents you do not know about. He went on to describe situations where Ethan had pursued girlfriends of mine in high school and college, usually unsuccessfully. He had once attempted to sabotage my college application to Northeastern by hiding the acceptance letter. Most disturbing, he had spread rumors at my first architectural firm that I was interviewing elsewhere, nearly costing me a promotion. "We should have told you," my father said. "We wanted to protect him, to give him chance after chance to become better. But in doing so, we failed to protect you." This conversation shifted something fundamental in my understanding of the situation. Jessica's betrayal still hurt deeply, but I recognized that she had been manipulated by someone skilled at identifying vulnerabilities and exploiting them. More importantly, I realized that continuing to spiral in pain and self-doubt was giving Ethan exactly what he wanted, proof of his power to destroy my happiness. That night, I began researching therapists, specializing in betrayal trauma. The next day, I returned to work, focusing on immediate tasks while avoiding social interactions. I started running again, pushing my body to exhaustion to combat insomnia. Small steps toward reclaiming my life became daily victories. 2 months after the wedding that never was, my father called with surprising news. The family business accountant had noticed financial irregularities dating back to when Ethan briefly worked in their office before moving to Chicago. Further investigation revealed he had been embezzling funds through falsified vendor accounts. Small amounts, consistently over time, totaling nearly $70,000. "We have not confronted him yet," my father said. "We wanted to gather complete evidence first." The discovery sparked an idea. While I had been focused on emotional recovery, I had neglected to consider practical justice. Ethan had caused immeasurable pain, but perhaps there were tangible consequences to be faced for his actions. Working with my father and the company accountant, we documented the embezzlement thoroughly, creating a comprehensive record of Ethan's theft. I wondered if Jessica knew about this aspect of Ethan's character, if she understood the extent of his dishonesty and selfishness. I found my answer unexpectedly through Tyler, who remained friends with one of Jessica's coworkers. According to this mutual connection, Jessica was already expressing doubts about her relationship with Ethan. His attentiveness during their affair had quickly faded once they were officially together. He had become controlling, questioning her whereabouts and growing angry when she spent time with friends. The passion she had mistaken for love was revealing itself as possessiveness. Armed with this knowledge and the evidence of Ethan's crimes, I arranged a meeting at my parents' home. I asked them to invite both Ethan and Jessica, suggesting it was time for a family reconciliation. Suspicious but curious, they both agreed to attend. The confrontation occurred in my father's study, a room that had always intimidated me as a child, with its heavy furniture and serious atmosphere. My parents sat behind the desk while I remained standing near the door. When Ethan and Jessica arrived, I could immediately sense tension between them. Jessica looked exhausted, dark circles beneath eyes that darted nervously around the room. Ethan maintained his confident facade, though wariness crept into his expression at seeing all of us gathered formally. "What is this about?" he asked, attempting to sound casual. My father opened a folder containing printouts of financial records, transaction histories, and bank statements. "We know about the money, Ethan," he said simply. $73,000 over 18 months. Ethan's face went blank, a sure tell he was calculating his next move. Jessica turned to him in confusion. "What money? What is he talking about?" "Nothing," Ethan snapped. "A misunderstanding about some consulting fees." My father continued calmly. "We have documentation of 57 separate transactions where you diverted company funds to personal accounts. The evidence has been reviewed by our corporate attorney, who has advised us we have grounds for criminal charges." Jessica stepped away from Ethan, comprehension dawning on her face. "You stole from your family." The mask slipped, then Ethan's features contorting with anger. "They owe me. Do you have any idea what it was like growing up as their charity case? Always compared to perfect Augustus, always reminded how grateful I should be." "We never saw you that way," my mother interjected, pain evident in her voice. "We loved you equally, tried to give you every opportunity." "Equal?" Ethan scoffed. "Nothing was ever equal. Augustus had everything handed to him from birth. Security, confidence, legitimacy. I was always catching up, always proving myself." "So you decided to take what you believed you deserved," I said, speaking for the first time. "Money from the business. My fiancée. Anything to prove you could." Jessica's face had drained of color as the full picture emerged. She turned to Ethan with horror. "Was that all this was? A way to hurt Augustus?" "Do not be naive," he sneered. "We have something real. This has nothing to do with him." But his eyes told a different story. The same triumphant gleam I had seen the night of his confession. The satisfaction of taking something valued. Jessica saw it too, backing further away from him. "I cannot believe I fell for this," she whispered. "I destroyed my relationship, hurt someone I genuinely loved for what, your revenge fantasy against your brother?" My father interrupted this realization. "We have a decision to make about how to proceed legally," he said. "Given your relationship to this family, we wanted to discuss options before involving authorities." Ethan's arrogance crumbled as he realized the seriousness of his situation. "You would press charges against your own son?" he asked incredulously. "Over what amounts to an advance on my inheritance?" "This is not about money," my mother replied. "This is about trust, about family, about the choices you have made repeatedly to hurt people who care about you. You need help, Ethan. Help we cannot provide while enabling destructive behavior." The meeting ended with my parents presenting two options. Ethan could face criminal charges for embezzlement, or he could agree to repay the money while attending mandatory therapy for his underlying issues. Either way, his relationship with the family business was permanently severed. Jessica left separately from Ethan, pausing near me before exiting. "I am so sorry," she said quietly. "I know it means nothing now, but I am truly sorry for the pain I caused you." I nodded acknowledgement, but offered no absolution. Some betrayals change relationships permanently, closing doors that can never be reopened. As she walked away, I felt neither satisfaction nor renewed pain, only a sad clarity about human weakness, including my own. Ethan ultimately chose to avoid criminal charges, agreeing to repayment and therapy. Our relationship, however, was irreparably damaged. My parents maintained limited contact with him, their parental love surviving despite deep disappointment. I chose distance, recognizing that some wounds require permanent boundaries to heal properly. 6 months later, I accepted a position with an architectural firm in Seattle, specializing in sustainable commercial design. The move across the country provided physical distance from painful memories and a fresh professional challenge to focus my energy. My apartment overlooking Puget Sound became a space for rebuilding, minimalist and modern, containing nothing from my previous life with Jessica. The healing process was neither quick nor linear. Some days still brought waves of anger or sadness, but they became less frequent, less overwhelming. My therapist helped me recognize that being betrayed did not define me. My response to betrayal did. I chose resilience over bitterness, growth over stagnation. In Seattle, I reconnected with Anna, a former college classmate who had moved there years earlier. Our friendship redeveloped slowly, built on shared interests in architecture and hiking the Pacific Northwest trails. Unlike the whirlwind connection with Jessica, my relationship with Anna developed cautiously with clear communication and healthy boundaries. Her steady presence helped restore my faith that genuine connections were possible. Through the painful experience with Ethan and Jessica, I learned crucial lessons about trust and family. Blood relations guarantee nothing. Family is defined by consistent respect and support, not genetics or legal documents. Love without respect is merely possession disguised as affection. And most importantly, we must trust our instincts when relationships feel unbalanced or manipulative rather than dismissing warning signs out of loyalty or optimism. Today, I can look back on that period with a strange gratitude. As devastating as the betrayal was, it prevented me from marrying someone capable of such deception. It revealed the true nature of my relationship with Ethan, allowing me to establish necessary boundaries. It forced me to examine my own patterns of conflict avoidance and people-pleasing that had enabled many problematic dynamics. I no longer define myself by that betrayal or allow it to determine my capacity for trust. Each experience, even the painful ones, shapes us, but need not limit us. The question is not whether we will face betrayal in life. We almost certainly will, but whether we allow it to embitter us or strengthen us. I choose the latter, moving forward with wiser eyes but an open heart. If my story resonates with you, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever discovered someone close to you was not who they seemed? How did you recover and rebuild? Hit that like button if you believe resilience is our most powerful response to betrayal. Subscribe for more real-life stories and share this video with someone who might need to hear that healing is possible after devastating loss. Thank you for listening, and remember, our worst moments can become the foundation for our strongest future.